She said, "I'm nothing." The cowboy held her hand and promised, "You be my wife." Clara had always felt like she was living in the background of her own life. She grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other, and everyone had a place, or so it seemed. But for Clara, it was as if she didn't quite fit anywhere. She worked at a little bakery on Main Street, the smell of fresh bread and sweet cinnamon filling the air. But even surrounded by the warmth of customers and friends, she often felt invisible. She would smile, and sometimes people would smile back, but it always felt like the smiles were polite rather than real. It was the same with words. She spoke, but it felt like no one truly heard her. Clara spent her evenings walking along the dusty streets or sitting by the edge of the river that cut through the town. Watching the water move slowly, she often thought about her life and how ordinary it seemed. She told herself, "I'm nothing." And each time she said it, it felt like a truth she could not escape. She didn't have big dreams that people admired. She didn't have adventures that others would envy. She just existed, quietly and unnoticed. That year, the town prepared for its annual fair, a small but much-loved event where everyone gathered to celebrate the end of summer. There were stalls selling pies, lemonade, homemade crafts, and there was even a small stage for local musicians. The fair was full of laughter and music, and for the first time in months, Clara thought about going. She wasn't excited. She wasn't even sure why she wanted to go. Maybe it was just to see the lights and hear the music, to feel like she belonged somewhere, even if just for a few hours. On the first night of the fair, Clara walked slowly through the crowds. The smell of popcorn and roasted corn filled the air. Children ran past her, sticky fingers grasping cotton candy, while their parents tried to keep up with them. Music played from the stage, a soft, gentle tune that made her heart feel lighter, if only a little. She watched families laughing, friends chatting, and couples holding hands. She felt a familiar pang of loneliness, but there was something comforting about being among people even if she stayed at the edges. That's when she noticed him. He wasn't loud or flashy like some of the others at the fair. He had a quiet presence that seemed to make the air around him calmer. He was a cowboy, tall and strong, with sun-kissed skin and kind eyes that seemed to notice everything around him. He was helping at a small booth, guiding a young boy to win a prize by showing him how to toss a ring just right. But it wasn't the boy's laughter that drew Clara's attention. It was Luke's smile. It wasn't perfect or staged. It was gentle, real, and it felt like it was meant for the people who needed it most. Clara stood there for a long moment, watching. She felt a strange mix of curiosity and hesitation. She had never been good at starting conversations, especially with someone who seemed different. Luke didn't look like the people who had ignored her at school or at work. There was something about him that made her feel, for the first time in a long while, seen. As if sensing her presence, Luke looked up. Their eyes met, and he gave a small nod, acknowledging her without a word. Clara felt her heart race, though she didn't understand why. She turned away, telling herself that this was silly. He didn't even know her. Why would someone like him care? She walked a few steps further, but she couldn't stop glancing back. He was still there, helping another child, but his eyes seemed to find her again. Finally, she gathered a little courage and approached him.
"Hi," she said, her voice barely above a whisper.
"Hi," he replied, and his voice was warm, like a cozy blanket on a cold night. "First time at the fair?" "Yes," Clara said. That's okay," Luke said, smiling gently. "It's nice to have you here." "I'm Luke." "Clara," she said. shaking his hand. His hand was strong, but not rough. It felt steady and safe. They started talking. At first it was small things, the music, the food, the children running around. But soon the conversation flowed more naturally, like a gentle river. Luke didn't ask questions that made her feel judged. He listened. He laughed when she made a joke, even when she thought it was silly. And when she hesitated, unsure of what to say next, he didn't rush her. He just waited, giving her space to be herself. Clara felt something stirring inside her, a feeling she hadn't had in a long time. She felt noticed, not for her looks or her job or anything she thought mattered, but for her, as she was. Luke's attention wasn't demanding or overwhelming. It was quiet, kind, and real. For the first time in years, Clara felt like she mattered. As the night went on, they wandered through the fair together. Luke showed her the old carousel, its lights twinkling against the dark sky, and they shared a small caramel apple. They laughed at the clumsy antics of the fair games, and Clara found herself forgetting the usual voice in her head that told her she was nothing. In Luke's presence, that voice grew quieter, almost non-existent. At the edge of the river, where the town lights reflected on the water like tiny stars, they paused. Clara looked down, fidgeting with her hands. She wanted to tell him about her fears, about the long years of feeling invisible, but the words felt heavy on her tongue. Luke didn't rush her. He simply stood beside her, silent, giving her courage, just by being there. Clara started, then stopped. The words didn't come out. She felt tears prickling her eyes, not from sadness, but from the strange mix of hope and fear. Luke turned to her and said softly, "You don't have to say anything. Just being here is enough." That simple sentence, spoken without any pressure or expectation, touched her deeply. For so long she had believed she had to be perfect to matter, that she had to earn love by being someone she wasn't. But in that moment she realized she didn't have to. She could just be herself, and it was enough. As the night drew to a close, Luke walked her back toward her home. The streets were quiet now, the fair winding down. Clara felt a strange mix of sadness and warmth. Sadness that the night was ending, but warmth because it had happened at all. Before she went inside, Luke looked at her with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. "I'm glad I met you tonight, Clara," he said. "I hope we can do this again." Clara nodded, feeling a shy smile spread across her face. "I'd like that," she whispered. As she watched him walk away, she felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. For the first time, she imagined the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't nothing. Maybe someone could see her, truly see her, and care. That night, as she lay in bed, Clara thought about the evening again and again. She thought about Luke's kind eyes, his patience, the way he made her feel like she belonged somewhere. And even though she knew it would take time to believe it herself, she felt something shift inside her. The quiet strength of a simple connection had begun to light a small flame in her heart, a flame that promised that life could be brighter than she had ever imagined. And for the first time in a long while, Clara allowed herself to dream, not of grand adventures or dramatic changes, but of a life where she mattered, where someone could truly see. After that night at the fair, Clara found herself thinking about Luke constantly. His smile, his quiet patience, the way he seemed to notice her in a way no one else ever had. It lingered in her mind like a gentle melody. But alongside the warmth, doubt crept in. Why would someone like him care about me? She asked herself over and over. I'm nothing. I have nothing special to offer. For days, Clara tried to push the thoughts away. She buried herself in work at the bakery, kneading dough, frosting cupcakes, and arranging fresh bread on the shelves. The smell of warm bread and sugar usually comforted her, but even that couldn't erase the feeling that she was unimportant. Customers came and went, many exchanging kind words with her, but she barely noticed. Her mind was elsewhere, replaying the moments at the fair. Then, one afternoon, Luke appeared at the bakery. Clara froze for a moment, unsure if she wanted to see him again so soon. But the moment he smiled at her, all her hesitation melted. "Hi, Clara," he said, his voice calm and easy. "I thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing." Clara felt a flutter in her chest. She wanted to smile, but her insecurities whispered, "What's he doing here? He could have anyone. Why would he want to see you?" She tried to hide her nervousness, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'm okay," she said quietly. Luke didn't push. He leaned casually against the counter, looking around the bakery as if he belonged there just as much as she did. "The bakery smells amazing," he said. "I think I could live here just for the smell of fresh bread." Clara laughed softly. It was strange how he could make her laugh, even when she was thinking negative thoughts about herself. There was no judgment in his words, no hidden meaning, just genuine kindness. She realized, slowly, that talking to him didn't feel like work. It felt easy, safe, and warm, like coming home after a long, tiring day. Over the next few weeks, Luke continued to visit. Sometimes he brought small gifts, a jar of homemade honey, a bouquet of wildflowers, or fresh eggs from his farm. Each gesture was simple, but it carried weight. Clara noticed that he didn't give these things to impress her. He gave them because he thought she would enjoy them, because he cared. And the more she realized this, the more her walls began to crumble. Yet, the voice in her head never completely went away. Every kind word from Luke was followed by self-doubt. "You don't deserve this. He's too good for you. Why would he want to be friends with someone like you?" It was exhausting, and sometimes Clara found herself pulling away, afraid of letting him see too much of her fear. One chilly afternoon, the bakery was nearly empty. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, and the sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow over the wooden floors. Luke came in, smiling as usual, and Clara felt her heart lift. "Hey," he said gently, "mind if I help with a few things?" Clara hesitated, then nodded. Together they arranged pastries on display, cleaned the counters, and even laughed when a loaf of bread fell and rolled across the floor. Clara realized that being around Luke didn't make her feel like a failure. It made her feel capable, like someone believed in her even when she couldn't believe in herself. After they finished, they stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The sun was low, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Clara wrapped her hands around a warm cup of tea Luke had brought, and for a moment they stood in comfortable silence, watching the world go by.
"You know," Luke said finally, breaking the quiet, "I see something in you that you don't see yourself."
Clara looked at him, startled. "What do you mean?" she asked.
"You have a kind heart," he said. "You notice things others miss."
"You care in ways people don't always appreciate. You're stronger than you think, Clara." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but the old thoughts whispered, "I'm nothing. He's just being nice." She looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. I don't feel strong," she admitted. "Most days I feel like I'm invisible. Like I don't matter." Luke stepped closer, his hand brushing gently against hers. "You do matter," he said softly.
More than you know. And even if you can't see it now, I do.
I see you. All of you. Clara's eyes welled up, and she quickly looked away, afraid he could see how fragile she felt. But there was no judgment in his gaze, only patience, only understanding. She realized slowly that she had never been seen like this before. Not really. Not the way Luke saw her. Days turned into weeks, and Clara began to open up more. She shared stories about her childhood, the little things that had shaped her, the dreams she had quietly tucked away. And Luke listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer solutions or tell her what to do. He just listened. And in that listening, Clara felt a warmth that slowly began to replace the cold doubt she had carried for years. But life wasn't always easy. Clara's self-doubt still crept in, especially when she was alone. Some mornings, she would wake up and feel the familiar heaviness, telling herself she wasn't good enough, smart enough, or worthy of kindness. And yet, even on those days, Luke's presence lingered in her mind. His steady smile, his quiet patience, his belief in her. It was a lifeline she clung to, even when she couldn't believe it herself. One afternoon, an opportunity came that shook her confidence completely. Clara applied for a small scholarship at a local art school, something she had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to pursue. When she received the rejection letter, her world seemed to collapse. She felt foolish for even trying. "I'm nothing," she whispered to herself, tears stinging her eyes. She walked aimlessly through the town, clutching the letter. The streets felt colder, emptier, and the words on the paper echoed in her mind. "I'm nothing." She sat down on a wooden bench by the river, staring at the slow-moving water, feeling hopeless. Then she felt a hand on her shoulder. She looked up, and there was Luke, calm and steady, his eyes filled with concern. "Clara, what's wrong?" he asked gently. Through her tears, she handed him the letter. Luke read it quietly, then looked back at her. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know this hurts, but this doesn't define you. It doesn't make you nothing. It's just one thing, one moment. It doesn't erase everything you are." Clara shook her head, still unsure. "But I tried, and I failed. Doesn't that mean I'm not good enough?" Luke crouched down to be at her eye level. "Clara, listen to me," he said softly.
You are more than one failure. You are more than your doubts.
You are kind, creative, strong, and capable. I see it, even when you can't. And I will remind you every time until you see it too. Something in her heart shifted. She felt a tiny spark of hope, fragile but real. Luke wasn't just saying nice words. He was showing her, through his actions, through his patience and care, that she mattered. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe, even a little, that maybe she was more than what she had always thought. That evening, they walked together along the riverbank. The sky was painted in soft shades of purple and pink, and the town lights reflected on the water like tiny stars. They didn't speak much, but the silence was comforting. Clara felt Luke's presence beside her, steady and reassuring, like an anchor in a stormy sea. "I don't know how to stop feeling like nothing," she admitted quietly.
You don't have to stop right away, Luke said. It will take time.
"But I promise you're not nothing, and I'll be here reminding you, showing you, every step of the way." Clara nodded, a small smile breaking through her sadness. It wasn't a complete healing. It never would be in just one night. But it was a start, and that start, fragile as it was, felt like the beginning of something real, something good, something that might just change her life. As they walked back toward town, hand brushing against hand, Clara felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. Fear that she might lose this connection, that she might fall back into old patterns of self-doubt, but hope, too. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she could learn to believe in herself with Luke by her side. For the first time in a long while, Clara realized that love wasn't just about grand gestures or perfect lives. Sometimes it was quiet, patient, steady, and gentle. And sometimes it was exactly what someone needed to start seeing their own worth. As the weeks turned into months, Clara found herself spending more time with Luke. Their friendship had grown quietly, naturally, like a river slowly carving its path through the land. They met often, sometimes at the bakery, sometimes at Luke's farm, and sometimes simply walking through the small town together. Each meeting was a little adventure, even if it was just picking apples from his orchard or watching the sunset over the hills. Despite the comfort she felt around him, Clara still struggled with the voice inside her that whispered, "I'm nothing." Some days the voice was louder than ever. On those days, even Luke's patience seemed not enough to quiet her fears. She worried that he would eventually see through the mask she had built over the years and realize that she wasn't worthy of his care or attention. One late afternoon, Luke invited her to his farm to help with the animals. The sun was low, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and Clara felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She loved the farm. It was peaceful, alive, and full of small wonders, but she also feared letting herself be seen too much. "Don't worry," Luke said, noticing her hesitation. "You don't have to do anything perfect. Just come and be yourself." Clara smiled softly. There was something magical about the way he said that. So simple, yet it made her feel safe. She realized he didn't expect her to be anything other than herself, and that realization brought a warmth to her heart that she hadn't felt in years. They spent the afternoon feeding chickens, collecting eggs, and brushing the horses. Luke showed her how to handle the animals gently, explaining each task with care and patience. Clara laughed when a playful goat nudged her, and Luke's laughter joined hers, filling the open space with a joy that felt rare and precious. After a while, they sat on the porch of the barn watching the sun dip behind the hills. Clara held a cup of warm cider, and Luke handed her a small bouquet of wild flowers he had picked from the field. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. He didn't need to say anything. His actions already told her that she mattered. For a moment, Clara felt the walls she had built around herself begin to crumble. She wanted to tell him everything, the fears, the doubts, the years of feeling invisible, but the words seemed too heavy to carry. Instead, she took a deep breath and allowed herself to simply sit beside him, letting his presence calm the storm inside her. As the sky darkened, Luke spoke softly. "Clara, have you ever thought about what it would be like to believe in yourself the way I believe in you?" I don't know if I can," she admitted. "It's hard. Every time I try, I feel like I'm failing." Luke reached out and gently held her hand. His touch was steady and reassuring. "You won't fail if you keep trying," he said. "It's okay to stumble. You're learning, you're growing, and I'll be here every step of the way." Clara felt a tear slip down her cheek, but this time it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of relief, of hope, of realizing that someone truly saw her and believed in her. She squeezed his hand, and in that simple gesture, she felt a connection that words could not fully describe. The next few weeks were filled with small but meaningful moments. Luke continued to show her kindness in ways both big and small, helping her with her errands, bringing her homemade treats, and simply spending time together. Each moment chipped away at the doubts she had carried for so long. Slowly, Clara began to believe that maybe she was worthy of love and care. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. One morning, Clara received news that shook her to the core. Her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents had passed away, was seriously ill. Clara felt a surge of fear and helplessness. She didn't know how to face the possibility of losing the one person who had always been her anchor. She spent the day at the hospital, sitting by her grandmother's bedside, holding her hand and praying silently. The familiar voice of self-doubt whispered louder than ever. "You can't do anything right. You're useless."
You're nothing. Clara felt herself being pulled into a dark place. And for the first time in months, she wondered if she would ever find hope again.
That evening, after a long day at the hospital, Luke found her sitting alone on the porch of her home, staring at the stars. He sat beside her without speaking, giving her space but offering silent support. After a while, Clara finally spoke, her voice trembling.
I don't know how to be strong.
"I don't know how to handle this." Luke turned to her, his eyes full of compassion. "Clara, being strong doesn't mean never feeling scared or sad. Being strong means letting yourself feel and still choosing to keep going. You've already been so brave, even when you didn't realize it." Clara felt her chest tighten. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. No one had ever acknowledged her fears without dismissing them. Luke's words were like a balm to her soul. She felt herself leaning on him, not out of weakness, but out of trust. Over the next few days, Luke stayed by her side, helping in small ways, bringing meals, offering quiet conversation, and simply being present. Clara realized that strength didn't have to be a solo effort. It could be shared. And in that sharing, she began to understand that she was not nothing. She was someone who could be loved, supported, and seen. One evening, as the sky turned shades of deep blue and the first stars appeared, Luke took her hand and led her to the edge of the river. The water reflected the night sky like a mirror, calm and steady. Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. "Clara," Luke said softly, "I know you've been through a lot. You faced fears, doubts, and pain that no one should have to face alone. But I want you to know something. You are not nothing. You are more than you realize, and I promise to remind you of that every day, if you let me." Clara felt tears fill her eyes. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the sincerity in his gaze. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it. She squeezed his hand, a small but meaningful gesture that said more than words ever could. That night, as she lay in bed, Clara reflected on everything that had happened: the fear, the doubt, the pain, and now the hope. She realized that life wasn't about being perfect or always having control. It was about moments like these, moments of trust, connection, and courage. And in those moments, she found a strength she hadn't known she possessed. The days that followed were not without challenges. Her grandmother's illness continued to weigh heavily on her heart, and some days the self-doubt returned with a vengeance. But now, Clara had something she hadn't had before. Someone who believed in her, who reminded her of her worth, and who helped her see that even in the darkest times, she could find light. Luke continued to be her steady presence. He didn't try to fix everything or solve all her problems. He simply walked beside her, offering support, patience, and love. And slowly, Clara began to understand that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfection. It was about showing up day after day and believing in someone even when they couldn't believe in themselves. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the porch of Luke's barn, Clara felt a warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. She realized that she was beginning to trust herself, to see her own worth, and to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be happy. And in that moment, she knew that her life was changing. Not because everything had become perfect, but because she had found someone who saw her, truly saw her, and loved her anyway. The months that followed brought change, challenge, and growth for Clara. Her grandmother's health slowly improved, and though Clara still carried a weight of worry, she felt stronger than before. Much of that strength came from Luke, who had become a quiet but steady presence in her life. He never forced her to be brave, but his patience, kindness, and belief in her made her realize that she could face difficult times without feeling alone. One afternoon, Luke invited Clara to spend the day at the ranch. It was spring now, and the fields were green, dotted with wildflowers. The horses grazed calmly, the chickens clucked softly, and the breeze carried the scent of fresh grass. Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. For the first time, she felt like she could simply exist and enjoy the moment without worrying about failing or disappointing anyone. "Come on," Luke said, holding out his hand. "I want to show you something." Clara took his hand, and they walked through the fields together. Luke led her to a small hill that overlooked the ranch. From there, the view stretched far and wide, rolling hills, fields, and a river glinting in the sunlight. Clara felt her chest lift with wonder. She had seen this place before, but somehow, seeing it with Luke made everything brighter, more alive. "Why are we here?" she asked softly, looking up at him. Luke smiled gently. "I wanted to share this with you. I come here when I need to think, when I want to feel calm. And I wanted you to see it too." Clara nodded, touched by the simplicity of his gesture. She didn't need grand declarations or dramatic events. This quiet moment felt enough. She realized that love, trust, and connection could be simple, patient, and unspoken. As they sat on the grass, Clara found herself opening up again. She talked about her fears, her struggles with self-doubt, and the long years she had spent believing she was nothing. Luke listened without interruption, his hand resting lightly on hers. He didn't offer platitudes or empty encouragement. He simply listened, giving her the space to speak and the reassurance that she was not alone.
"You know, Clara," he said finally, his voice soft. "I've seen you grow over these months."
"I've seen your strength, even when you didn't see it yourself. You've faced so many challenges, and yet you're still here, still trying. That's not nothing. That's everything." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of gratitude, not sadness. She wanted to believe him, wanted to let go of the doubts that had haunted her for so long. She looked at Luke, really looked at him, and saw the sincerity in his gaze. She felt seen, truly seen, in a way she had never experienced before. The day continued, and as the sun began to set, Luke stood and held out his hand to her again.
"There's something I want to tell you," he said.
Clara's heart raced. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, unsure what to expect. Luke took a deep breath. "Clara, I know you've struggled to believe in yourself. I know you've carried a lot of pain and doubt, but I want you to know this. I don't see your doubts, your mistakes, or your fears. I see you. All of you. And I can't imagine my life without you in it." Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to speak, to tell him everything she felt, but the words seemed to falter. Luke knelt down on one knee, holding her hand in both of his. "Clara," he said, his voice steady and full of warmth, "I want you to be my wife. Will you marry me?" For a moment, Clara was silent. Her mind raced with disbelief and emotion. Could it really be true? Could someone see her, all of her flaws and fears, and still love her so completely? She felt tears spill down her cheeks, tears of relief, joy, and wonder. Yes, she whispered finally, her voice trembling. Yes, I will, Luke smiled, lifting her hand to his lips and placing a gentle kiss on it. Clara felt a wave of happiness wash over her, a feeling so powerful it seemed to fill every corner of her being. For the first time in her life, she felt fully seen, fully loved, and fully capable of believing in herself. Over the next few weeks, Clara and Luke shared quiet moments that deepened their connection. They spent time planning the future, talking about the life they wanted to build together. Clara began to see herself in a new light, not as someone who was nothing, but as someone worthy of love, respect, and happiness. There were still moments of doubt, of course. Clara was human, and old fears didn't vanish overnight. But now, she had Luke by her side, reminding her, showing her, that she was enough. And slowly, those old fears began to lose their power over her. One evening, as they watched the stars from the porch of the ranch, Clara turned to Luke. "I never thought I could feel like this," she said softly.
Like I matter, like I'm enough. Luke took her hand and held it gently.
"You've always mattered, Clara. You just needed someone to remind you. And now I hope you'll remind yourself too, every day." Clara smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart that she had never known. She realized that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfection. It was about patience, trust, and showing up for each other every single day. And in Luke, she had found someone who embodied all of those qualities. As the days passed, Clara's confidence continued to grow. She began to take small steps toward pursuing her dreams again. She painted, she wrote, and she even shared her work with friends, slowly learning to believe in her own abilities. Luke encouraged her every step of the way, celebrating her successes and supporting her through setbacks. The ranch became their sanctuary, a place where they could be themselves without fear or judgment. They spent long afternoons tending to the animals, walking through the fields, and sharing stories about their pasts, their hopes, and their dreams. Each moment was a reminder that life could be simple, beautiful, and full of love. One day, Clara reflected on her journey. She thought about the girl who had once sat alone by the river, believing she was nothing. She thought about the fear, the doubts, and the pain she had carried for so long. And she realized how far she had come, not just because of Luke, but because she had allowed herself to be seen, to be vulnerable, and to believe that she was worthy of love. She looked at Luke, who was feeding the horses nearby, and felt a surge of gratitude. He had given her more than love. He had given her a new way of seeing herself, a way to believe in her own worth. And in that realization, Clara felt a sense of peace and joy that she had never known before. As the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Clara knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together. There would be challenges ahead, of course, but she felt ready to face them, knowing that she was not alone. She had Luke by her side, and together they could build a life full of love, trust, and hope. That night, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Clara rested her head on Luke's shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." Luke smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I've always seen you, Clara, and I always will." For the first time, Clara truly believed it. She was no longer the girl who felt invisible, who whispered that she was nothing. She was someone loved, someone valued, someone capable of facing life with courage and hope. And as she held Luke's hand and looked up at the endless sky, she knew that together they could weather any storm and enjoy every joy that life had to offer. This is part 4, approximately 1,300 words. It's the climax of the story, featuring Luke's proposal, Clara's emotional breakthrough, and deepening of love and self-acceptance. It's wholesome, engaging, and sets up a satisfying resolution in part 5. I can now continue with part 5, completing the story with growth, resolution, and fulfillment in the same detailed, engaging style. Do you want me to write part 5 next? Part 5, expand. K-row, without heading. 1,300 words. In simple English. Words. It should be interesting, and every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. And don't use any violated word. Avoid any violated content. Absolutely. Here's part 5 fully expanded to approximately 1,300 words in simple, engaging English. Wholesome and emotionally satisfying, bringing Clara and Luke's story to a heartwarming conclusion. The months after Luke's proposal were filled with quiet excitement and planning. Clara had never imagined that her life could feel so full of promise. The thought of marrying Luke, of building a life together, filled her heart with joy and a gentle calm she had never known. She still had moments of doubt, of course. Old habits die slowly. But each day, with Luke by her side, she felt stronger and more capable of believing in herself. They spent many days working together on the ranch, preparing for the wedding in small, simple ways. Luke wanted the celebration to be meaningful, not extravagant. He invited the townspeople who had been part of their journey, the friends and neighbors who had watched their story unfold. Clara helped decorate the barn with wild flowers, hand-painted signs, and strings of lights. Every detail reflected their personalities, warm, humble, and genuine. As the wedding day approached, Clara felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. She had never imagined being the center of attention, never imagined that someone could love her so completely. But the closer the day came, the more she realized that this wasn't about being perfect. It was about being loved for who she truly was. And in that realization, she found a quiet courage. The morning of the wedding, Clara woke early. Sunlight streamed through her window, casting a golden glow over her small home. She sat quietly, sipping tea and thinking about her journey. She remembered the girl who had once walked alone through the town, believing she was nothing. She remembered the nights of self-doubt, the tears, the fear, and she thought about Luke, the steady, patient, loving presence who had shown her that she mattered. Clara felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude. She had grown in ways she never thought possible. She had learned to trust, to believe, and to love herself as much as she loved others. And now, she was ready to begin this new chapter, hand in hand with Luke. The ceremony was held in the barn, under the soft glow of string lights, and surrounded by wildflowers. Friends and family gathered, smiling and whispering, eager to witness the union of two people who had found each other in the simplest and most profound way. Clara walked down the aisle, her heart pounding, but not from fear. It was from joy, anticipation, and a deep, abiding love for the man waiting for her at the end. Luke stood there, calm and smiling, as if he had been waiting for this moment all his life. When he saw Clara approaching, his eyes softened, and he took a deep breath. It was a look that spoke of patience, understanding, and unwavering love. In that moment, Clara felt her doubts melt away completely. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The ceremony was simple, heartfelt, and full of meaning. They exchanged vows that reflected their journey, vows not of perfection, but of patience, trust, and commitment. Luke spoke of seeing Clara for who she truly was, of believing in her, even when she couldn't believe in herself. Clara spoke of the courage she had found through his love, and of the joy she felt knowing they would face life together. When Luke took her hands in his, Clara felt a rush of emotion that was almost overwhelming. She realized that this man had not only loved her, but had helped her love herself. He had seen the value in her when she could not, and his unwavering support had allowed her to grow in ways she never imagined. "Clara," Luke said softly, his voice steady, "I promise to love you, to support you, and to remind you every day that you are worthy, capable, and beautiful in every way. Will you be my wife?" "Yes," Clara whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I will." They kissed, gently at first, then with the fullness of all the love they had nurtured over the months. The crowd cheered, and Clara felt a warmth in her chest that seemed to expand with every heartbeat. She looked at Luke and knew without any doubt that she had found her place in the world. The celebration that followed was filled with laughter, music, and joy. Friends and family danced, shared stories, and celebrated not just the wedding, but the journey that had brought Clara and Luke together. Clara laughed more freely than she had in years, feeling a sense of belonging that went beyond words. She had once believed she was nothing, but now, surrounded by love, she realized how wrong she had been. In the weeks that followed, Clara and Luke settled into married life. The ranch became a place of shared dreams and quiet happiness. Clara spent her mornings painting, her afternoons helping with the animals, and her evenings walking with Luke through the fields. They celebrated small victories and comforted each other through challenges. And through it all, Clara continued to grow, learning to trust herself and her own worth. She also began to give back to the community in her own way. Clara started a small art class for local children, teaching them to express themselves and to find joy in creating. She shared her story with them, not to boast, but to show that even when life feels hard, courage, love, and patience can help you grow. Watching the children learn and flourish reminded her of her own journey and strengthened her belief that she could make a difference. Luke continued to be her anchor, patient and loving, always reminding her of her worth. Their love was quiet but profound, built on trust, respect, and the shared understanding that life was not about perfection, but about presence. Clara realized that happiness was not found in grand gestures or instant success. It was found in small, consistent acts of care, in being seen, and in believing in oneself. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the barn watching the sunset, Clara reflected on how far she had come. She thought about the girl who had once walked alone, believing she was nothing, and marveled at the journey she had taken. She had faced fear, self-doubt, and loss, and yet she had emerged stronger, more confident, and deeply in love. She turned to Luke, who was watching the sunset with a calm smile, and felt a rush of gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" he asked, turning to look at her. "For seeing me," Clara said, her voice steady and full of emotion. "For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. For helping me find courage, hope, and love." Luke reached out and held her hand. "I didn't do anything you couldn't do yourself," he said gently. "I just reminded you of what was always there. You were never nothing, Clara. You've always been more than you knew. I just helped you see it." Clara smiled, tears in her eyes, feeling the depth of his words. She realized that her life had transformed, not because everything had been perfect, but because she had allowed herself to be seen, to trust, and to grow. And in that growth, she had found joy, love, and purpose. Years later, Clara and Luke would look back on this time as the beginning of everything. Their life together was full of simple joys, sunsets over the fields, laughter echoing in the barn, the quiet satisfaction of shared work, and the love that deepened with each passing day. They faced challenges, of course, but they faced them together, hand in hand, their bond unbreakable. Clara never forgot the journey that had brought her here, the nights of doubt, the tears, the fear of being invisible. But she also never forgot the lesson she had learned, that patience, trust, and love could transform even the most uncertain heart. That true connection was built on presence, kindness, and belief in each other, and that even when life seemed impossible, hope and courage could light the way. And in Luke, she had found a partner who embodied all of that. He had given her more than love. He had given her a mirror in which she could see her own worth, a safe place where she could grow, and a life full of possibility. As they sat together on the porch that evening, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold, Clara rested her head on Luke's shoulder. She felt a sense of peace, fulfillment, and joy that was deep and enduring. She realized that she had finally found her place, not just with Luke, but within herself. She was no longer the girl who whispered that she was nothing. She was a woman who had learned to love, to trust, and to believe in her own value. And as the stars appeared one by one in the night sky, Clara knew that this was only the beginning of a life filled with love, hope, and the quiet, steady magic of simply being seen, being loved, and being enough.